can remember a moment of just like dancing with this older woman in the aisle, because it was very clear I was out of place, but I was just like speaking Spanish. The words I remembered, it had been a few years since I practiced, and having an adventure with her, and we were just laughing. I think it comes down to connection, and that extends beyond to human. I think connecting with ourselves, with the world around us. So my trail name was Double H, which stood for Huckleberry's Human, because again, if you start the trail with a 10-month-old puppy, everybody is like, I miss my dog, he's so cute. Oh my gosh, he's laying in the trail. I'm like, I know, he's laying in the trail. The head of the Charles Regatta takes place in Boston every year, the third weekend in October. In the event that my boat was in, we placed first. Turn my headlamp to him and say goodnight. Why is his fur moving? And he was covered. He had gone through a nest of ticks. To me, it all feels normal, but I'm sure it's weird to somebody else.
Hey there, adventure seekers. I'm Kenny, host of the Novel World Travels podcast, where I'll explore the transformative power of experience. Dive deep with me as I chat with extraordinary people, uncovering the lessons hidden in their journeys, the good, the bad, and the life-changing. Live vicariously, embrace new perspectives, and grow along with me on the Novel World Travels podcast. Hey everybody, today we have Alison, a remarkable adventurer and leader. Alison began her rowing journey at the University of New Hampshire, where she quickly rose to become the captain of the women's team for 2 years and led them to victory at the prestigious Head of the Charles Regatta in Boston, where 11,000 rowers competed. She went on to coach high school rowers to national success with the Great Bay Community Rowing Organization. Beyond rowing, Alison is a college professor who has hiked the entire Appalachian Trail, covering approximately 2,200 miles in just 4.5 months. She has also backpacked solo across South America. Recently, she dedicated her time to helping children hospitalized for life-changing burns. She helped them learn to build relationships with horses. This year, Alison is embracing new experiences and community service. Let's welcome Alison to the show. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Kenny.
For sure. Let's get started. I'm really curious I know a little bit about you, but I don't know about how you grew up. I know you grew up in Massachusetts. So tell me a little bit about your life growing up there.
Sure. So I grew up in Massachusetts, kind of the classic New England experience of, I don't know if there is a classic New England experience, but grew up in Massachusetts with my parents who were separated, so I got to bounce between two houses, which was really quite a fun experience. Got to see a lot of different things with that. Grew up very, very close to my cousins and extended family as well. Trips and travel, because I know this is a travel podcast, was really kind of focused on New England, with a couple of bigger trips here and there throughout childhood that were like very special adventures that thinking and talking to my parents now, it's like, oh my gosh, they really either saved up or planned quite a bit to make those happen. So I feel really fortunate for those memories. But yeah, it was just like a lot of playing outside. And every summer, what I loved was my aunts who didn't have kids would run a camp for all of my cousins and I. And so we would all go up to Acadia National Park with them. And it kind of gave our parents a break, but we had a week to play with all 9 of us. And we were all counselors for the camp. So I was in charge of cooking and another person was in charge of arts and crafts and things like that. And so we did a lot of the same hikes and the same activities year after year, but we kind of grew up doing that. But memorable out of the typical experiences were, I can remember my mom taking us to Arizona one time, and that was like a very special trip. And I think she was able to do it because she had a brother there, and we were able to stay with him. And another time we road trip down to like Virginia, and just some random things here and there that were out of the typical New England driving distance.
So, it sounds like pretty cool. Arizona must have been like a stark difference compared to New England, huh?
It was very different, and it was really cool it was with my mom's side of the family, extended family, and that was such a gift. But again, it was like a one time, like a very, I don't know, it was a big deal to go on an airplane. It was a really big deal. Until I got into high school, I started doing a little bit more travel on my own. So I studied abroad, or did like a mini study abroad with my Spanish class my senior year of high school. which was sparked by a trip to Costa Rica my sophomore year with my stepmom's good friend was running trips with her school, her students, and I was able to save up and pay to go on that. And that was quite the experience. But to stay with a host family and speak Spanish my senior year was like really, I think, impacted how I travel now.
Wow, cool. That's really cool. So, a little bit of travel. Did the the international experience briefly, and then you went to college, right?
Yeah,
You went to the University of New Hampshire initially.
I
So
did. Yes, for undergrad.
yeah, so I was I was interested in how you grew up, but I really wanted to jump to this part because you went there and you'd played sports. What sports did you play in high school?
Oh gosh, all the ones for smaller people. I played field hockey and then quickly outgrew that. I'm 6 feet tall, and the it suddenly just became a sport of bending down. And I played ice hockey and softball as well. I had played basketball for a long time and didn't make the team once I grew. I didn't know how to do some of the taller positions on the team. So
So you
yeah,
struggled. You kind of there were some struggles, some challenges you had to adjust, but you went to the University of New Hampshire and
yeah.
you were challenged by some people. Can you tell me this story and what happened?
Yeah. So my the like first night year at UNH, they put on a lot of events for students, and I was like, I need to go to everything. So I went to what's called Jukebox, which was a lot of the student organizations came together and just put on kind of a fun, not quite carnival, but just a fun evening to check out clubs, but really just adjust the university. It was like the start of the collection of free t-shirts that you could get at UNH. And I had these like three women who were at eye level with me run up. You have to row. I'm like, okay. Like my cousins had rowed. I knew about it. Of all my cousins, I'm the smallest. So I was like, oh, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And so I hopped on a rowing machine and went against this woman who's still a good friend. I actually just saw her this fall when I was in Colorado. And we raced, and I don't know what the end result was other than it was either close or I won or not quite sure. But the next day was a team meeting in the movie theater on campus, and we heard about like practices at 5. We'll see you on Monday. And I showed up and barely missed a practice. I slept through one practice one time my senior year. I was quite tired, but beyond that, I rarely missed a practice. And it was 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day.
So you went to playing sports that you struggled or you had unique challenges you had to overcome to becoming the captain of the team 2 years in a row. How often does that happen?
Um, I'm not sure about after I left, but I think prior to me, there may have been 2 or 3 other women for the women's team. I'm not sure about the men's team who had served in that role for 2 years in a row. So it felt
So,
very special to be in that legacy with them.
so you found your sport, but
Yeah.
let's fast forward for a second. I want to get back to that. But you went these women came and challenged you to this rowing challenge. And that was an example of just saying yes. You could have said, no, that's not my thing, but you went and did it. So with that example of saying yes, um, it kind of defined that ended up defining your life kind of because you rode, you're a row coach, are you in and so like this year you've decided this is the year of saying yes. This is what you mentioned to me. And so what does that mean to you, the year of saying yes? And what do you hope to come from that approach?
Wow. It's so interesting to hear my words back to me and powerful. My hope is to just be open to kind of what is brought forward from the universe. I think that there are times where I am at odds and fighting what should kind of naturally happen from the universe. And so I'm working to listen and be a little bit more open-minded and have my heart a little bit more open to these opportunities because rowing was a little bit primed because my cousins did it. And there have been definitely things I've said a strong no to. But saying yes has led to some just incredible connections. And I would say the year and the focus on yes has led to connection, which has been something I've been really focused on and seeking through different adventures and activities.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I was fascinated by that, by, there's so many times where a small um instance in our life can define things. Like, can you imagine if you didn't make it to that freshman day, that introduction day, or whatever it was called, or those women didn't see you and you didn't participate? You may not have been a rower. Maybe you would have, maybe you wouldn't
Right.
have, and you wouldn't have had the experiences teaching, or being a row coach, or doing some of the other things that we're getting ready to talk about. For example, can you explain to me and the listeners what the head of the Charles Regatta is, and how significant is that event to rowing?
Sure. So the head of the Charles Regatta takes place in Boston every year, the third weekend in October. So if you happen to be in Boston around that time, I'd say the one time rowing is a great spectator sport because there's always a boat going by, and it's just quite beautiful that time of year. But it's the largest now 3 day. They've expanded it to 3 days, largest 3 day regatta in the world. So to compete in it is very exciting, and not everybody gets in. There's only so many seats per boat and only so many boats per race. So to be a part of that it's really incredible, and to coach athletes who are in it is really powerful now too. I've rowed in it a couple times since, but it's the largest 3 day regatta in the world. The Henley, which is a regatta in the UK, is another large one, and then the Olympics as well.
Yeah. So rowing in it, what's the best you placed in
The best in the event that my boat was in, we placed first.
first? So
Mm-hmm.
that means you were the number one, what, four women boat team in the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Yeah,
That's pretty extraordinary, because I mean,
yeah,
of course there are different categories, and there's men and women, but there were 11,000 people worldwide participating in that.
yeah.
That's pretty tough right there. That's awesome. I mean, wow.
Thank you.
That's
Thanks.
something to be proud of.
It was an exciting time, and what's interesting with that race in particular is, which I love just in general. In the spring, boats line up and you all start the race together, so it's very clear who wins. In the fall, which this race takes place in the fall, it's a head race, so it's one boat, and then 10 seconds later the next boat, and then the next boat. So it's all racing the clock, and you don't know how you placed until everybody is finished and you're back on land. So it was quite a surprise when it happened, and it still to this day is like I still don't quite believe it happened, but it was a wonderful experience.
So you're not near these other boats, but you're close enough. You know who's in what position. So you're just pumping along, just rowing, and you can see what place you're in, and you're just like giving your all. And once you cross that finish line, how did you feel? Did you know immediately, or?
No, we didn't know for 3 hours. There was a mess up with the timing, which was hilarious. We Every boat has a number on it, and so we could tell we had passed 7 boats. I believe about 7. I don't quite remember all the details, but we passed a bunch of boats, so we knew we were faster than them. And then we looked to see what numbers were crossing the finish line after us, and we could see kind of who were the fast ones, and then tried to make a guess. We thought we did well, maybe top 10, but to come in first was, yeah, it was. My mom actually tells the story really well. She took me and the other rowers out to dinner after, and we stayed at her house because she lives near Boston. And she stayed up all night just listening to us. We were all in separate rooms being like, did that just happen? Did we just, what just, and I don't remember any of it, but I think we just won. And then we'd Google the results, and it was a really incredible thing. And so to see now the athletes that I coach have that opportunity to just be in that really incredible space surrounded by rowers from all over the world is really special.
There's about 8 billion people on this planet. To be number one in anything on this whole planet is pretty badass. So yeah, that's pretty
Thank
cool.
you.
Props to you. What's the most rewarding aspect of your time on the rowing team, and how does that continue to impact your life today?
Oh gosh. So many things. Very recently, the movie The Boys in the Boat came out, which is based on a book called The Boys in the Boat, and they talk about this concept of swing, and it's the only book that I've read that captures it well of my experience, where it's eight or four or two, however many people are in your boat, truly swinging together and doing something completely in unison, down to when you're exhaling, when you're inhaling, how you're leaning and rotating out of the boat. Like this idea of being so in unison with somebody without thinking or knowing it's happening. And then when you bring an awareness to it, being like, oh my gosh, that was incredible. And on a less serious note, I've really learned how to layer well to knowing what to wear and for morning practices when it's icy and cold or really sweltering hot. That has helped a lot in travel. So I think that just the swing and how to be in unison with people, but also what to wear is really quite a skill to have.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially in New England.
Yeah.
So can you tell me and your listeners what is Great Bay rowing, and what's it like coaching there, and why is this particularly a thing you're passionate about?
Sure. So Great Bay Rowing is a community rowing team that's based out of Dover, New Hampshire, so just down the road. And what's great about Great Bay is specifically I coach the high school team. There are several programs. We have Learn to Row. We coach adults. I've been on the adult team as well and competed since graduating. But this high school team is pretty incredible because it's kids from all over, so they're not pulled from one particular school. So we'll have kids from 30, 45 minutes away who don't see each other all day. And then they get to come together at practice and really just play and connect and just find that swing together, depending on what boat they're in. But it's really cool. And we get a lot of students who are homeschooled as well. So rather than just joining the local high school team, which they're allowed to do, they kind of have their own team that isn't just, oh, the Dover High School or the Durham High School, whatever it is. It's special for them. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And also tell me what Camp Courage is and how you participated in that.
Sure. So, Kenny, the week after we met, which was on our service trip in Arizona, I continued in Arizona with two other of the volunteers who were on our trip as well. And we went to Camp Courage, which is hosted by the Arizona Burn Foundation. This was my first year working with them. The folks who I was with who have been working with them for years and years, so are way more expert on the matter. But the Arizona Burn Foundation puts on a camp for kids who have spent time on a burn unit and have experienced severe burns. So it's basically all these incredible volunteers get together, like some of the most fun humans, and they just create this classic camp experience for kids. So the commonality is a really tough situation. And that can come up at times, and it's really powerful to just let it be and know that there are adults who are kind of experts in that and other kids who are experts in that to support them.
Interesting. Um, can you share a memorable interaction and how that interaction affected you personally?
From Camp Courage
Yes,
specifically?
yes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there were so many. The the kids are just wonderful. I think that the in general, it was just the idea that they came and ready to play. But I was specifically on the horse team, and I'm learning about horses. I am not an expert with horses. This has been a year of yes, and yet one of those yeses has been horses. Um, and so I was kind of on the ground team. I was not leading trail rides, but to see the participants, the campers connecting with horses, we did a lot of leading them around and teaching the kids how to be with them and lead. It was pretty awesome when I could take a step back and they would really just have the presence with the horse to have that eye contact and that connection and say, hey, we're going to go over this obstacle or through or around this obstacle. And they did it often without even holding a lead or like pulling on the horse or really telling them what to do. They just did it with the movement of the body. And that was I know people who know horses are like, oh, of course that happened. But to me, I was like, wow, like it's actually happening. And this kid who is just pint sized and who has had just such a hard time at times in their life already, maybe even at 8 years old, is able to do that. So there's not one particular kid. It was just moments like that over and over.
Sure. So I mean, you coach rowing. You're a professor at University of New Hampshire, right?
Yeah, adjunct. I teach one
Okay.
class.
Can't we just say professor?
Sure,
No, no,
sure.
yeah, but no, yeah, I got you. You're making it clear. But you do that. You helped at Camp Courage. You worked on the Hopi Reservation. So many of your experiences. This podcast is not just about travel. It's about experience in general and how it can transform you. So many of your experiences are revolve around leading, teaching, giving. What's the importance? Is there some importance or value in that combination of serving, leading, teaching, and having experience along with that?
Yeah, that's a great yes, would be my short answer. Yes to all of that. I think that it's really easy, and I've been one to get caught up in the 9 to 5 job in that I was just full time teaching, but I'm finding a lot more joy in saying yes to moments where there's true connection. And I think it comes down to that. We as humans strive to find that connection. And so whether that is through a service experience or watching athletes on the water. And right now I just, after our Arizona time, went to Florida out of the blue, found some flights that worked out, and surprised the athletes that I had been coaching who made it to nationals. And in particular, like this group of athletes, they're just so connected to one another, and to be able to witness that has been just really wonderful. So yeah, I think I base a lot of what I do in experiencing and facilitating and being a part of connection. But sometimes it's just nice to watch it from a distance. Like when I'm coaching, I'm in a totally separate boat with a megaphone, and they're over there, and I can see it, and it just feels like I'm experiencing it right with them, and that's pretty amazing.
That's really cool. Um, I mean, so you've been a role model and a guide for others. Who was who was a mentor in your life, and what's a lesson that you carry from them?
Oh my gosh, I feel like there are so many. In this yes year, um, one of the women that I've been working with or worked with at Camp Courage, but who has been kind of a constant in all of these, in many of these yeses, um, has been an incredible mentor and guide. And I just find that it really, this idea of connection and kindness, it always comes back to that. And I don't even think she knows she's saying it or modeling it, but I'm constantly in awe of like, oh yeah, like, what would she do in this moment? Okay, like connection, kindness, it can come back to that. And I think that's how I try, even when I don't want to and I'm frustrated or whatever the moment is, just remembering to come back to those two things.
Wow, that's really interesting. It's always nice to have someone to be a mentor, role model, in your life, and so you can, base your actions on, and your, you can learn something from them. I haven't had too many role models, and so the few that I've had, and a few examples I've had, I've always really appreciated to have those. I mean, I think, you know, doing the right thing in life, and learning. I mean, it's just a concept, or it's a concept or a philosophy until you see it embodied by a human being actually doing those things, and
Mhm.
it's really meaningful to see it in action. So yeah, that's really interesting. So I wanted to talk about something. So there was this time where I was in the desert, and I woke up in the morning. I looked out the window and I saw these beautiful horses out there. And I was like, you know what? My followers like horses, and they know I love animals. And I'm going to go out there and take a couple pictures and throw them on Instagram. Then, I'm getting dressed. I'm throwing my Crocs on, getting ready to walk outside. And then I see these horses run away. Why? Because I see a young woman in the morning, getting it first thing in the morning, running around, running and getting her exercise and chasing the horses away. So for my listeners, that person is Allison right in front of you. And so what I want to know is how do you stay motivated and inspired to maintain your physical fitness during your travels?
Wow. Well, one, it could just be running away from horses, and it's sheer
Or chase
terror.
or
That's
chasing them away?
motivation enough. No, it was that was a very funny moment. I was thinking the same thing from my end. I was like, "Oh, look at these horses running towards me," and I needed to get back in time for breakfast. So I start running, and then they realize it's me, and suddenly it's like a stampede. I'm like, "Oh no, what have I done?" And then I kept running, and they kept following them. Um, I can't say I'm 100% with. There are moments where I'm like, you know what, my activity was enough, whatever adventure I was doing. I do try to incorporate movement into travel, and I've kind of made that a decision this year, um, where I think it's important for me to not just go like city to restaurant after restaurant, which I love food, and not that food is an enemy at all, but I really love when the focus is like a hike or an activity or a service project of some sort. Um, I think it's just recognizing there is time and it's okay to step away at times to make sure that happens. So whether it's get up a little bit early to run, um, or see a hill when I'm in a new place and say, I'm going to go walk up that. Just, I use it as a way to explore. So when I'm in a new place, like I usually will go for a run to just see it faster, because walking it isn't always going to be, I won't be able to see as much, but if I go for a run then I can see more, so I find that's my motivation.
So
But
one of those you like for physical activity to be the focus of your travel, and one of those things was you hiked the Appalachian Trail. That's amazing. Now, for all of you who are unfamiliar with the Appalachian Trail, this is a trail that goes through 14 states. It is 2,200, approximately 2,200 miles. And she did it in 4.5 months. What were the physical and mental challenges of doing that hike?
so many. One was, I never told anybody that I was doing the whole thing. I looked at my family. I was like, I'm going to go hike for a week. I'll see you in a week. But I had rented a car, and I was getting a one-way rental. So I think they knew, but I didn't know that they knew. So that was an interesting thing. It was kind of the mental challenge of, am I really doing this? I hiked with my dog. And so the challenge was, am I doing this and is it fair to him? So I was always hiking at his pace. And then I was also on a deadline to get back in time for teaching. So it was like, can I get there fast enough while still enjoying it and making it fun? So kind of all of that to say, there were wonderful days where I hiked a lot. There were wonderful days I hiked 0 miles. There were crummy days where I hiked a lot, and also crummy days of zero. Um, it was all of those things all at once.
Oh, so you said there were some days where you hiked a lot and some when you didn't hike at all?
Yeah, so we took zeros sometimes where it was just a full day of rest or enjoying in town. I would say I didn't often take zeros. I would do some smaller days. We called them near zeros, Neros. So I would do some Neros as well to like just rest and slow down, or like take extra time at a pond or a lake or a waterfall, or just to be with friends. Um, so it wasn't always it wasn't fully a physical focused challenge. It was, today I'm just going to walk a few miles, and that was great.
What kind of dog do you have, and what's your dog's name?
Sure. So my dog's name is Huckleberry, and he's a Lab and Great Pyrenees mix. And when we started the trail, he was 10 months old. So I was trying to be really mindful of, as he was like growing and learning, how do you really like be respectful and thoughtful of his experience. So we would we'd hike all morning, and then 12 o'clock would hit and he's like, I got a nap. So we would just nap in the middle of the trail for a couple hours and then keep going. And that was the start of the trail. And then in the middle, he didn't need the nap as much. And towards the end, he needed to be around people all the time. It was a lot of it was learning how to read him and gauge that the whole experience off of his needs and my needs.
Did he do pretty well?
He did great. He's
Did you
pretty wonderful.
did you both bond pretty
Oh
tight?
yeah, we're pretty we're pretty tight. He's extra sassy right now because he doesn't walk as much, but we're pretty tight.
When did you do this?
I was the class of 2023 for the Appalachian Trail. Um, every year is a different class. So I did it April to August of 2023.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting. How did hiking the Appalachian Trail how did it influence your appreciation of natural landscapes? And how do you think this appreciation can inspire or benefit others?
Sure. Um, in every way possible. There's a book that I haven't read, but is on the Appalachian Trail, and it's on my list, called Walking with Spring. And having started in the middle of April, I felt like I got to do just that. And so I walked with as spring was blooming. So I started off and there was like no tree cover and very small flowers. And then as I went, I watched the flowers grow, I watched the trees fill in, but I was also moving more north. So I got to also see different varieties of plants and things like that. So there was a true appreciation of, funny because I say when I go to new places, I like to run and go through them, kind of see more of it. But this was a really nice way to see the East Coast, which I've spent a lot of time traveling through growing up, but also with rowing, we would travel down to Georgia and back every year for training trips. And so to see the East Coast in this way in a much slower pace was really, really wonderful. And then there were moments where you had like no view for 10 days. And so you'd get to a viewpoint that was maybe not 10 days, a few days, or it'd be raining it rained all last year. I don't know if you remember, or no, I guess you were in Colorado. You wouldn't know, but it rained on the East Coast most of last summer. So everything was such an appreciation. The rain would change the landscape and make it beautiful in certain ways and miserable in other ways. So every time we'd get to a viewpoint, or you'd see an orange salamander in the Smoky Mountain National Park, it was amazing. It was just, there was such an appreciation for, holy smokes, I'm doing this. I'm pausing everything else in life to just walk. And it was so cool.
That is so cool. I should have asked this, but what's the motivation to do this? It's just like, this is, I see the challenge. Can I do it?
Yeah, I've heard it divided for many folks in different ways. So some folks are like in a transition phase. It's like, how do I go from high school to college? What do I do after college? I've just retired. What do I do? So it was funny. I was kind of in the middle where it wasn't very common to find people kind of a similar age. They were usually right out of or before college or retirees. There were many my age, but wasn't the most common thing to do. So often there's a transition focus. Others are processing some event in life, or they're trying to get answers, and you think you're going to think a lot on the trail and you don't. Like I would think about what I was going to eat next, and that was just so exciting always. Yeah, because you're just walking and you're burning a lot of calories. And then there's also kind of just the excitement of the adventure. And some folks, there are 3 long trails in the U.S. between the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. Some folks are on their second or third of those 3, and they're trying to become what they call a triple crowner. So my motivation was a bit of a mix. I don't know if that's your follow-up question, if I'm jumping ahead, but it was processing things that I hadn't processed for a long time and taking space from realizing that the world continues on when I'm not there. So I stepped away from my job, my family, everything. I literally sold my house on a Friday, and there were no rental cars available until Monday. Otherwise, I would have left on Friday. But sold my house on a Friday, started driving to Georgia on Monday, and was on the trail Wednesday morning hiking. So for me, it was processing just a lot of big transitions and changes, and also just the idea of an adventure and realizing, you know what, all the people I'm meeting who are retirees have waited and are saying like, I'm really wish I had started sooner, and I'm just glad that I did it when I did it.
So you didn't do a whole lot of thinking or reflection, but can you tell me this? compare the first step of stepping on that trail to the time when you were finished. What's the difference in mindset and how did you feel?
Connection. I think I was in a pretty tough, not a tough spot, but in a like pretty lost. I wasn't really recognizing myself. And this is something I think anybody who listens to this podcast, they might be like, oh, that either makes sense or they don't know about me. But I was processing a lot of things. And as much as I didn't think as much as I did need to think, the movement was good. And at the end, I just felt connected. And I actually am looking around, and the pictures that I have up around me are AT pictures and the people that I just love so much that are some of my closest friends. And I may have only overlapped with them for 3 or 4 days on the trail, or maybe we hiked together for a month, but I hiked it alone. And at times I overlapped with other folks, and it was the connections I made. I actually found recently, because I'm about a year out from it, and pictures are popping up a year later. And there was a video that popped up just the other day that was about, maybe it was like a month ago. And I was a couple days into the AT, and I was trying vlogging, video blog, like, let me try this. And I felt so uncomfortable. And it was actually a really powerful video to look back and see kind of where I was to where I ended. And the video, basically, to sum it up, was like me getting choked up about the people I was connecting with. And I was only a week in. I was like, this is amazing. I didn't know I needed this.
So I think one of the things, I mean, in that hike, you've kind of embodied some of the important things in health, in general health, nature, exercise, community. And so I'm wondering if you can share a memorable story about a friendship you formed while hiking anywhere. It could be Appalachian Trail, it could be anywhere, but just
Sure.
memorable relationship that you met.
So when you are hiking and you end up hiking with people for an extended period, you often refer to them as your trail family, your tramily. And I would say I had two different tramlies on the trail. And so any memories really, I jump to them and I just smile thinking about them because they are just so wonderful. They're the people I will just call out of the blue. But I have to talk about both if that's okay, just briefly. But so I was hiking along coming out of Damascus, Virginia, and this man who was French was like told me a riddle. He's like, solve this. And he's my friend Gwen, and we ended up hiking together, him and my other friend Bryson, for quite a long time. And Gwen was only hiking until about halfway because he only had a 3-month visa. And so we get to where we hiked together. We had so many good laughs and so many good stories, and we would go and watch a million sunsets, and it was amazing. But we dove into conversations that there was one particular day we just like had conversations way beyond small talk. And it was days like that where time just flew. You didn't even know you were walking or what you were talking about, but you just dove in. And within a matter of days, he and Bryson, I feel like the three of us knew more about each other than some of the folks that I had grown up with and had known for years, or people that I had rode with. And that was amazing. And then similarly, again, on the idea of connection, if that's all you get from this podcast, that's what I find. It's just putting yourself out there and being willing to talk to people. There was a woman who was hiking, and her name is Annie. We all have trail names, but I'm using their real names for this. And she was like my height, my speed, everything. And her energy was just awesome. And I was like, I want to hike with her. And I met her in Virginia. And then I had to pop off trail to go to my brother's graduation. But later I saw her again. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to hike together. This is so great. And then we didn't overlap until later. And then we ended up doing like the last 500 miles together. And it was just amazing to end the experience with her, with another woman on the trail, because it is a male dominated activity for sure. I can't even describe it or give like one specific moment, but just the memories with these folks and the bonding that happens, like, and I kind of attribute it to Huckleberry. Huckleberry got to a point, the dog, where he didn't want to hike just with me. He would actually like cry when we didn't have either Bryson or Gwen or Annie around. And so to be able to have moments with them where he was content, because I questioned, I was like, should I end the hike? This is not great. He's not feeling good. And the minute we were with either Bryson and Gwen or Annie, like all was good with the world. And it was just amazing. And they were people I just happened to overlap with. I could have been 1 mile behind them for days and days and never met them. And I'm so grateful that we overlapped.
So that's another one of those times, those instances that could have changed the course of your life. And I
Yeah.
always think those are amazing. Just small things, small occurrences in your life can really define a lot of how how you live the rest of your life. That's really cool. That's an amazing story. I mean, I can't say that I've really seriously considered hiking the Appalachian Trail, but it really makes me consider it seriously. I mean, it
Thank
just,
you.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I mean, the way you told your experience, you explain your experience with connecting with people. I think it's something that I'd love to experience, I mean, you can experience it in different ways, but also I thought about the challenge of doing the trail, I mean, I'm sure going from Georgia to Maine, there's just all sorts of occurrences of challenges, but also beauty and probably perseverance uh
Definitely.
and I'd love to, I don't know, like it's just making me think about it. So thanks for sharing that with us, hopefully
Well,
it's for everybody else too. Yeah.
thank you for the
uh,
opportunity to share about it. It's funny, for a while I didn't want to talk about it or look at pictures of it. And now that pictures are coming up 1 year later, it's kind of it's like the notification on my phone of a year ago today. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that because I was so present in it. And then people are like, would you do it again? I'm like, no, I did it. I had my experience. I met these people, and there are so many people I didn't meet. And I flipped through, we have a hiker yearbook, and I'm like, wow, like there are so many folks who did it, and we could have been just a campsite away the whole time and just didn't cross paths. So I'm just grateful for the people that I crossed paths with. And same with backpacking in South America. When you said tell a story of a connection anywhere, like I wish I had more time and less things scheduled to just keep meeting people and saying, yes, let's go here. Yes, let's go there. I ended up on some really cool adventures down in South America this past winter just by recommendations from folks.
Interesting. I want to hear just a little bit about South America, but one last thing is, what was your trail name?
So my trail name was Double H, which stood for Huckleberry's Human. Because again, if you start the trail with a 10-month-old puppy, everybody is like, I miss my dog. He's so cute. Oh my gosh, he's laying in the trail. I'm like, I know he's laying in the trail. Like I'm driven nuts and he's just eating it up. So I was Double H. And yeah,
That's cool.
pretty. It's interesting. There's people who don't. I didn't often share my real name. I never said Allison to a lot of folks. I was just Double H.
That's super cool. Wow. So many aspects of that, of hiking that trail, that are cool. Like your class, you have your own class. There's a yearbook. You get trail names. Yeah, all that's super cool. Um, wow. So you said you didn't think very much during that hike, but does self-reflection play any role in travel? For you, or I'm sure it does, but to what role does it play?
Yeah, and I guess I did think. Let me clarify that. I think I thought I'd go into this with many questions and have answers, and I think typically with any curiosity, you often end up with more questions. And so, or like you think about random things, and you're like, oh, rice pilaf. I just want to think about that all day. Like you just food. You just focus on a food, and that's part of it. Self-reflection is a huge part. I struggle with it. And I often, in fact, that was a huge piece of going to South America. I had just left teaching full time and was like, I'm going to go. And I'm going to schedule it because you had to book some campsites ahead of time for where I was hiking specifically. I scheduled it in such a way where I knew I could get to camp pretty quickly and easily. So I was like, oh, I have tons of time to reflect and paint and draw and write. And I struggled with that. In fact, I looked at my heart rate on my watch that was tracking it, and my most stressful times of day were when I was relaxing at camp, attempting to self-reflect. So I think that says something of it. It's definitely for me a work in progress on that when I sit to self-reflect. I do a much better self-reflection if I am walking or moving and processing that in that way.
So activity is somewhat of a meditation for you.
Yeah, like a walk and talk, I will share a lot. Sit down and just talk to somebody that way is much harder for me.
Wow, wow. You're super interesting. That's cool. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah. Was there ever a funny or unexpected adventure um you experienced in one of your trips?
Sure. I mean, so many of them. Unexpected, most recently, I, it's all unexpected. And I think that that's the best part. But um, so I was hiking in Peru and was sharing my itinerary a little bit. And I think this goes with the theme of the yes. I was hiking the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu to be able to see that and experience that. And I shared that I had some open days kind of towards the end of my trip and had the recommendation of, oh, if you like this, you'll love going to Argentina. I'm like, but I'm not planning to go to Argentina. I don't even know how I'm going to get there, what I'm going to do. And this person who's become a friend was like, you're going to go to El Chalten. It's going to be amazing. You can backpack there. You can find a route. You can buy a map. It'll be awesome. And I said, okay, like I'm trusting what you're saying. And so I did. I had like a couple extra days and had no plan. And I just was going off of recommendations from this person from like 2 or 3 weeks earlier and ended up loving Argentina. That was one of the highlights of my trip because it was unscheduled time, an opportunity to self-reflect, but I was able to do it through movement, which helps me a lot.
That's pretty cool. Now, can you give me a brief summary of where you traveled in South America?
Sure. So I started in Peru for around a week, and then I went to Patagonia in Chile for a week to a week and a half, and then the Argentina part of Patagonia for just a couple of days, and then flew home. And that was kind of an unexpected trip altogether. I literally left my job and was like, what? I have these 3 weeks open with nothing else and no work scheduled. What am I going to do?
You were teaching middle schoolers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I was teaching middle school while still doing the other jobs that I do on the side. And the reality was I was saying no to a lot of the work I wanted to be doing. So it was kind of time to, while teaching was fun and an adventure, it was not fulfilling. There was not the same connection that I was looking for. And I did that job so I was the head coach for UNH for a year. And the reason I fell into that position was to allow me to continue to coach. So it was not something I was trained in and passionate about, but I loved doing it. It was a lot of fun.
That's cool. So you've done quite a where can you give me an overview of where you travel in the world?
Sure.
Should have asked this
Wow.
earlier.
No, that's okay. So I can go somewhat chronologically. While I did that Costa Rica trip, I studied abroad in Spain when I was an undergrad, and I've since been back to Spain. I studied abroad in the UK when I was in grad school, and so been to many parts of the UK, added Ireland onto that trip. I've tried all over the US, more so in my adult life, not other than the East Coast. I've done some stuff out west as well. I went to Morocco in 2019, and then most recently was the Chile, Peru, Argentina, and I'm trying to think what else. I think that's about it. Yeah, and Canada once to row.
Oh, cool, cool. That's interesting. So you've experienced a bunch of cultures. Have you incorporated any lessons or practices from any other culture into your own life?
I think most recently being in South America and seeing kind of, I wouldn't say I've incorporated a lot other than in meeting people in their travels. That has been very influential in seeing how folks approach travel. And specifically, I'm very excited by like young people traveling. And it's pretty amazing when people are taking like a gap year or a sabbatical or some sort of break to fully dive into a culture. And so there was this one woman I met when I was in South America. She was from France. Um, and she just like stopped everything for 6 months. It was very much like how I hike the Appalachian Trail. She did this to just be in South America, and she had no plan other than she was going to be a chef at restaurants. And I was like, that is just amazing. She's like, I'm going to go learn South American cooking and connect with folks through cooking with them in their restaurants. And that's how I'm going to find places to stay and places to eat and meet new people. And I was like, okay, this is incredible. So I would say the lessons of people that I've met. And then I'm always excited to meet with and work alongside folks who live in that area and are like being in Arizona and working with the Hopi and Navajo populations where that was just really powerful. Like that family was that I was particularly working with was incredible. And I've had that in other places as well. Like most recently in South America, it was like I went to, there was like the tourist grocery store and then there was like the local grocery store. And it was like so fun to go to the local grocery store. I can remember a moment of just like dancing with this older woman in the aisle because it was very clear I was out of place, but I was just like speaking Spanish. The words I remembered, it had been a few years since I practiced, and having an adventure with her. And we were just laughing because it was going to take like an hour to check out. And I just had like fruit in my hands. And so, yeah, it's quite, I just love meeting local folks and learning from them, but there's not been one big takeaway. I'm hoping to find more of that through more opportunities and more service trips.
So we're coming close towards the end, but there are a few more questions. I want to know um, uh, what mistakes have you made while traveling, and how did you recover? How did you deal with them?
I've made a lot of mistakes while traveling. I think there's not been anything where I felt unsafe, but just in general, making changes to accommodate other people has been a mistake in moments that I've regretted. Um, when I forget that, and I say that not at all on like a service trip and working with other people, but I'm going to change my plan because somebody else is encouraging me to do so, and not remembering why I'm there and experiencing what I'm experiencing. And that goes with, yeah, missing out on things. I don't like missing out on things. Those have been the biggest mistakes. And I think with the Appalachian Trail specifically, there were moments of rushing through it to meet a deadline. And I think I missed out on some connection that I would have loved, but I don't regret it. Like I think I needed that challenge at that moment and at that time. And there are times I'm like, darn, I should have sat by that waterfall for another 2 hours and camped wherever. So
Interesting. So, a lot of these trips you've taken by yourself. You
mhm.
just head down. When you went to the Appalachian Trail, that bottom of the Appalachian Trail, you went just with your dog, and it was just you were just planning on just letting life take you to where it took you, and you'd meet whoever you met, right? In South
Yeah,
America, same thing. You just kind of went down and said, head first, and you said, "Yeah, I'll figure it out when I get there." And you ended up making a lot of great connections. um there's a lot of people who, when they think about that, like, oh man, I'm going down by myself to a place I've maybe never been, or a culture I've never experienced. It may spark some concern or apprehension. How
mm-hmm.
would you reassure and prepare someone, especially women, who are nervous about traveling alone?
Sure. I think, and that's a very valid concern, and I, I think that going into it with curiosity is really important with anything. Like I said, you end up with more questions, but I think the curiosity to learn and to be open to learning, but while still having a safety plan in mind if it were to come to safety. So knowing like, hey, these are in general, this is where I'm going or where I'm looking to be, and if that changes, great, as long as it's a choice that you're making, and making sure you're remembering kind of why you're traveling. And that's where I say my mistakes have been where I've totally accommodated somebody else's needs and felt that I missed out on an adventure or on just an experience. But yeah, I think that yes, I'm traveling alone, but I go to places where I know interact with people who are either similarly, will overlap in some experience. So if it's a hike, I know I'm going to meet other hikers and have that opportunity. If it's in a city and I'm staying at a hostel, then it's going out and hanging out in the lobby to just meet people and see what people are up to. So it's a reframing of what alone means. Is you might not be hiking or you might not be traveling alone, but going and knowing that you're going to interact with people and being open to that interaction. And not everybody is the kindest human ever, but most of the time they are, and they're just excited to like meet and share their experiences with you.
So when you did travel alone, you did expect to be within a community of people who were going to be doing something similar that you'd have something in common with, and you can maybe discuss with, talk to them, hang out, have an experience together, maybe.
Yeah, sometimes, and then other times I really do enjoy, like especially with camping, it's really nice to just have my own tent and say, hey, I'm gonna go off my own for now, and that's great. But like from the safety perspective, I'm making sure somebody knows where I am, whether that's somebody back home and I've sent them, here's my rough itinerary for the next couple of days, or I meet folks and who are also on a similar itinerary if it's like a hike, and we check in on one another. But there are times where I'm not really sure there will be people, but in general, what I found is that there are, and that's been really, really great, just so it doesn't feel as alone.
Interesting. So so that's somewhat of a precaution. You make sure that people know what your itinerary is, what you will be. Are there a few other ones that you can share with someone who might be interested in doing something similar?
Sure. I think it's kind of whether I'm, off, like in another place, or I'm like in my backyard going on a hike, backyard meeting, like somewhere in New Hampshire hiking. I think it's important to let somebody know ahead of time, roughly where you're planning to be and when you might return or when they might hear from you. So that if they don't hear from you, it's like, okay, at what point do I check in? That could be some sort of tracking app. When I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, just for reassurance to my family, I had them tracking me with Find My Friends. But in general, it's okay at night in a city in particular. I'm not going to be out alone. Do I think anything would happen? No, but I think it doesn't. Why would I give the opportunity for that to be the case? So yeah, let people know your plan. And if it changes, let folks know. And even if it feels absurd to be texting somebody in another country, you're at least letting somebody know where you are.
Interesting. Cool. Thanks. So two more questions. One, what's one weird, strange, or out of the ordinary thing you've experienced during all your travels? Just one that stands out to you.
I gotta think on that for a second. Weird or strange? It's all weird and strange.
Pick one.
I know. All right, you're gonna have to cut.
That's a fun life to have weird and strange things. That's what I hope for. That's why I asked the question, because
I know.
who wants a normal, boring life? You want to do?
No, I don't know. To me, it all feels normal, but I'm sure it's weird to somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay, I can tell you. My worst moment on the Appalachian Trail, weird or strange. This is out of the ordinary and way out of my comfort zone. We'll go there. But it's always Virginia. Virginia is like 500 miles of the Appalachian Trail. So a lot happens there. And I'm sleeping. I have my tent, me and my dog in there. So Huckleberry and I are all snuggled in for the night. And I just like turn my headlamp to him and say goodnight. And I'm like, why is his fur moving? So, and then I'm like, what is happening? And he was covered. He had gone through a nest of ticks, which is disgusting. And I'm telling you all this in the prairies of Virginia, don't run through the cow fields because you will end up covered in 900 ticks that I hand picked off of him. So I went more the disgusting route, not so weird or strange, but that was my worst night on the Appalachian Trail.
That's kind of weird. Oh man, what
Nope, I hate it. And you might just cut this right out of the whole podcast.
No way. No way. People should hear about that. I mean, it's a lesson, but also it's kind of gross. I mean, I've had a few ticks, and I hear there are a ton of them up there in New Hampshire too. So But yeah, that's wild. Did you so you spent like the night pulling those ticks off, huh?
all night. And it was the next morning we had planned to do a marathon to make it in time to like this festival we were going to, my friend Gwen and I. And so I didn't sleep. And yeah, it was weird or strange. That one
That
pops
is
into my
strange.
mind as gross.
That's way strange. Remind me, how did you so you turned to say goodnight to him, and what did you notice? You noticed
I just noticed like his fur, there was movement. I'm like, why is there movement? And then I noticed teeny tiny baby bugs. And so we quickly got out of the tent because I didn't want an infested tent. And all night, the poor guy, he fell asleep. And I just picked for, I think, 6 hours straight.
poor puppy. Wow.
But he was all good. He was like, this is
Yeah.
a nice massage.
Well, with all that said, what's one in your life? You're 30 years old, if you don't mind me sharing. 30 years old, you've done quite a bit. You've been around the world. You've done some major challenges in hiking. You've given a lot. What's one what's an important lesson that you'd like to impart on our listeners here?
Oh my goodness, there's so much. But I think that I think I'm just going to keep repeating myself, but I think it comes down to connection, and that extends beyond to human. I think connecting with ourselves, with the world around us, and saying yes to those opportunities, um, and yes to the questions, and learning from others, because we we strive for that. We look for that as people, and whether that is connection through service or being out in nature, or just being in community with others, and truly being present in that is such a gift. So my hope is that others find that, and that's what I don't think when I grew up I traveled in that way. So it sounds like I have all these experiences, and I'm learning that now. And I'm learning, yeah, I think community and connection, the importance of that. And I'm constantly reminded by it, and meeting people like you, Kenny, who just embody that and understand that through meeting new people, through service, through all of it. It's just really wonderful. So I strive to live a life where that is the main focus, and I'm not there. And I hope to continue to strive for that.
That means everything. Yeah, I mean connection and connection with people, Matakia Owase. We're all family, and just realizing that when you connect with these people from France and this place or that place, and you realize like we have a lot in common and we have a lot to share. We're really all one, and it's really in your when you're at work or at school. Your brain cells are talking to each other and creating thoughts and action, and when we're different humans, we're brain cells of this universe sharing with each other as we hike up the Appalachian Trail or as we do a service trip with the Hopi or as we do this. And then even further, we're connecting with nature because you go out to the Appalachian Trail and not only you connect with people, but you're connecting with the world as the natural world as your job back in the middle school gets filled by somebody else while you're down in South America and your family goes on and eats breakfast and dinner and comfort and all these different things are going on. There's a McDonald's open somewhere and 5 states over and there's a million things while you're in the moment connecting with the trail, connecting with the ground, smelling the breeze, seeing the sunsets. And yeah, I think that's a super important lesson to share with everyone is connection. And because I believe that is sort of that's love there, when you're open to connect, because I think sometimes depending on the situations, it's easy for us to be disconnected and be shut off from each other. So that's a beautiful way to end it. So thank you so much for doing this. For the listeners, we had some challenges in the beginning. As you'll see, I'm on Zoom, and she was patient and kind enough to offer this as an option. For some reason, I used the program I was using wasn't really working for us, but the universe provided a way, and here we are. We had a conversation, and it was so cool. I was so excited to do this. So thank you so much for talking to me and sharing this. And it was a good time. So I appreciate it, really.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thanks for joining me on the Novel World Travels podcast. Subscribe on your favorite platform, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Join me on my community on Facebook. That's / Novel World Travels, and Instagram, Novel World Travels. And join me on my webpage, which is novelworldtravels.earth. And remember, life is outside. And if you can't get there, join me and my friends on the Novel World Travels podcast. I love you all.
Life is out.